And we fear risking the huge investment of actors in that sector. And we feared risking huge investment of actors in that sector. However, the conduct of the Minister of Communication and his action over the past 6 months since he resumed office has put the industry in a jeopardy and has particularly diminished the value of the only wholly Ghanaian-owned telecommunication company, which is Ay3ka. The minister runs rampage with pronouncements that has caused chaos in the telecom sector and specifically caused the loss of revenue to Ay3ka. In addition to the state of confusion that has thrown the staff and management of Ay3ka into, the minister lacks of corporate governance. Manners has not been on notice. So today, we want to address you and inform the people of Ghana development in respect of Ay3ka. Ghanaians will recall that in January 2018, 2 private mobile networks operators in Ghana, which is Airtel, and government has 25% in it, and Tigo, merge and consolidate resources to improve operation, reduce operational costs, and create a stronger competition. The merger created the country's second largest mobile network operator, which is Ay3ka. However, the inability of the new company, Ay3ka, to invest in the much needed infrastructure despite their competitor, which is MTN and Vodafone, now Telecel, invest in 4G. 4G technology was still a source of vulnerability to Ay3ka. Ay3ka could not achieve the goal of the merger as at their operation became unsustainable. Hence, a decision to close operation in Ghana in February 2020. Even though Airtel had indicated that it will consider consolidation of opportunities, including exits in the market where it's not among the top 2 players. The MPP government, under the leadership of Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, acutely aware that the decision of Ay3ka and the cessation of operation in Ghana will have caused substantial loss of jobs to many Ghanaians at the time that the global economy was in turmoil, entered negotiation and reached agreement with Ay3ka in April 2021. The policy underpinning of the strategic move by government to acquire Ay3ka was to protect the job of Ghanaians, protect the competitive balance of the telecom sector, safeguard critical national digital infrastructure, and enhance Ghanaian participating in the sector. The MPP government was also clear that it will source a strategic investor to turn around the operations of acquired operator, which is Ay3ka. In October 2021, when the agreement was executed, government paid $1 for the 100% ownership of Ay3ka. It must be noted that the current minister, Honorable Sam George, despite this strategic acquisition of 100% shares for $1, he alleged that the then Minister of Communication, Honorable Osla Owusu, paid some 25 million Ghana cedis for the acquisition, which is in what? Dollars. The assets, customers, which is about 1.5 million, management, responsibilities, and liabilities were acquired for only $1. In other words, the government paid $1 to save over 500 direct jobs and interest of over 5 million customers. Ironically, the minister, after 9 months in office, is yet to provide evidence of the $25 million payment he alleged. Instead, he is trying to undo all the job and customers saved with a proposed giving away of 80 for no value. For emphasis, we wish to reiterate that the MPP government overarching drive stated as given the multiplying effects of the telecommunications sector has on the economy and the various related industry, the government of to an agreement to ensure that thousands of Ghanaian jobs are safeguarded. That was relevant then and is still relevant today. Excuse me. Ladies and gentlemen, it is important to note that the MPP government did not just acquire Ay3ka without a plan of action to bring it back to competitiveness with other industry operators. As a matter of fact, Honorable Esla Owusu in the mid-2021 announced a plan to recapitalize and modernize Ay3ka, focusing on network expansion, digital service, and rural connectivity. There was at least a consensus that such strategic investment was the way forward for Ay3ka. This was also the position of the current Minister of Communication, Honorable Sam George. Unfortunately, the government faced the debt restructuring after COVID-19 and liquidity constraints, thereby deferring the planned capitalization of Ay3ka. This was necessary because the government expenditure alignment and reprioritization to focus on health and other social spending. Consequently, the MPP government engaged Deloitte Ghana in the late 2022 to exploit private sector capital mobilization for Ay3ka. Deloitte led an independent, transparent investor search and advised on strategic partnership options for Ay3ka. Through this, Hanan and Partners, Cell Station, and Afritel were respectively the top 3 private companies with the capacity to provide the needed financial and technical support to Ay3ka for a complete turnover. Hanan was selected with a proposal to provide $150 million for 85% ownership of Ay3ka. This investment was for comprehensive network modernization, launch of 4G service, and a long-term growth strategy for Ay3ka. Here again, Honorable Sam George was all over the media warning Hanan with his stolen goods for sale analogy. The unnecessary cacophony coupled with the upcoming election occasioned the withdrawal of Hanan into taking part of that particular bid. Ladies and gentlemen, the issue of Ay3ka are not too difficult to apprise. The strategic Ghana mobile network operator needs capital investment to make it competitive. The blueprint for the capital injection was mapped out by the previous government. Honorable Sam George, in opposition, then as a deputy ranking member for Information and Communication Committee, concurred with the blueprint capital injection at Ay3ka. Unfortunately, after one of, I want to take back again, Honorable Sam George in opposition and then as a deputy ranking for Information and Communication, concurred with the blueprint capital injection into Ay3ka. Fortunately, Afritel, one of the top 3, is still interested in investing in Ay3ka and providing Ay3ka and by extension the government with the needed capital for operational efficiency and profitability of Ay3ka. There is no need to reinvent the wheel. There is, however, a troubling development in the sector which we need to bring to your fore. The current government and Honorable Sam George, since assuming office, have demonstrated oscillating policy stance and has shown the lack of direction and certainty as to what they want to do with Ay3ka, despite the clear, unambiguous roadmap. When the minister visited Ay3ka on Friday, 2nd May 2025, he promised the staff and management that the era of surviving against the odds was over, and that the government will substantially invest in Ay3ka to revitalize its operations, expand the capacity, and unlock the potentials. Later on, 31st May 2025, Honorable Sam George, the minister, announced that government was negotiating with a strategic partner to revamp Ay3ka. The outcome of such negotiation was to be shared within 60 days. Therefore, this announcement, the government has signed a memorandum of understanding with Recton on the 21st of May 2025 for a 60-day ownership in favor of Recton. This was widely published on Recton website with the approval of government and reported by both Canadian Stock Exchange and the Frankfurt Stock Exchange in Germany, respectively. While the minority hold the view that the announcement by the minister was premature and smack of hypocrisy on the back of his previous grandstand attitude towards parliamentary approvals of international transactions, as he argued in case of Hanan while in opposition. We prioritize the interests of Ghana over partisanship. The minority caucus observed that the announcement and vast circulation of the news of Recton participation in Ay3ka was in line with the blueprints laid down by the previous government. Notwithstanding the lack of fitness and priority with the approach by the minister, we further observed that the news of Recton participation was met with renewed optimism and sense of relief across the telecom industry, particularly among the Ay3ka customers, employees, and management. As a result, we declined to take the posturing of Honorable Sam George whilst he was in opposition. Our consistent position is that Ay3ka needs partners with the resources to invest in requisite infrastructure in a rapid changing industry. Ladies and gentlemen, the minority, after all this announcement, ladies and gentlemen, the minister, after all this announcement to staff and signing of MOU with Recton, made a retreat in a press conference on the 3rd July 2025, when he stated that government had contracted KPMG as a transactional advisor for the deal with Recton. He further added that KPMG had 28 days left of the 60 days he announced on the 31st of May 2025 to complete this work. The 3rd July conference was without a definiteness of the earlier announcements. The question is, why will the minister announce an engagement when he was not sure? Why will the minister sign an MOU with 60 and 40 structure before his transactional advisor could advise? Why is the minister backtracking? Why is the minister not saying anything after the expiration of the 28 days window? The minister's attempt to backtrack from the earlier position was further exposed when on the 1st of August 2025, he was asked about the future of Ay3ka as if he only became aware of Office of the Attorney General. He explained that the future of Ay3ka depends on the advice and legal opinion of the Attorney General. Why is the Attorney General guidance now being portrayed as a determining factor when key decisions had seemingly already been made on the strategic partnership? This explanation is stark contrast to his earlier position, especially considering that the government had already secured a strategic partner, into brackets Recton, and appointed KPMG to oversee the transactions, including negotiating a deal. We must put on record that the minister's deference to Attorney General is not a surprise to us. Our impeccable information is that the minister with American Towers Company, which is ATC, met with American Towers, which is ATC, a service provider to Ay3ka, and promised to pay them some $5 million by the end of August 2025 of the alleged 1.5 million owned by Ay3ka. 1.5 billion owned by Ay3ka. Is it cedis? Yes. 1.5 billion owned by cedis. I want to take that again. By August 2025, of the alleged 1.5 billion owned by Ay3ka, the minister has since failed to honor this promise and now using the Attorney General as a shield. Was the minister not aware of the Attorney General when he made the promise to ATC? Withdrawing some services in line despite desperate attempts to remedy his lack of corporate leadership, Honorable Sam George quickly convened a meeting and directed that Ay3ka customers roam on Telecel network starting September 1st. The minister's conduct had led to an estimated loss of 7 million Ghana cedis in revenue to Ay3ka in the month of September. Fellow Ghanaians, Honorable Sam George oscillated to a position that Ay3ka will be consolidated with Telecel in a merger arrangement. He announced this at a meeting with staff and management of Ay3ka in a meeting on the 3rd of September 2025. The minister had announced that KPMG had 28 days left to advise him on the form of Recton participation in Ay3ka. And without any such briefing to Ghanaians, he was announcing a merger with Telecel, a company which has not been able to improve on its own capabilities and also in depth. In this meeting, the minister expressly conveyed an intention to abandon the Recton deal for a deal with Telecel. He argued that Recton was only investing $150 million for 5 years, as against a capital of $600 million required to attain competitiveness. I take that place again. He argued that Recton was only investing $150 million for a 5 years against a capital of $600 million required to attain competitiveness, customer market share of at least 28%. This is a facade of a reason, because Recton promise of $150 million is for the first year with a planned investment of over $1 billion. In a case of Telecel, is bringing on board absolutely nothing. So why will the minister abandon Recton for Telecel? Ladies and gentlemen, it defies logic and a sound reasoning that the honorable minister, who considered a $50 million network upgrade by Telecel, though the source of funding remains unclear, after the supposed consolidation as sufficient to sustain both companies, you dismiss $150 million initial 1 year investment and up to a total of $1 billion over the next 5 years. Such a position not only lacks consistency, but also raises serious questions about the minister's judgment and underlying motivation behind the decision. The minister also noted on the 3rd September 2025 meeting that was government policy to create a duopoly with the merging of number 2 and number 3 mobile operators to create a competitor against MTN, the number 1 player. While the minority has issues with MTN as the SMP, we do not think that this policy decision makes sense. With the greatest of respect, the government cannot be actively promoting a duopoly of a market, and much so by giving out its access to the private company to compete another private company. One cannot help but ask if the minister push for this so-called consolidation is actually about helping the telecom sector, or it is a clever way to make MTN stronger while killing 80 chances of surviving. How do you reject a $1 billion investment proposal from Recton and yet celebrate a $50 million upgrade from Telecel after the supposed consolidation with no major capital injection planned future on Telecel itself, after promising to invest $500 million in its own operations, has reportedly done barely a $10 million. We wish to place on record that MTN CEO revealed at the GSMA Digital Africa Summit that MTN has invested $1 billion in the last 5 years. The same amount Recton is committed to Ay3ka. Imagine how much success will the company witness and how much better service will Ghanaians witness from reviving company, which is Ay3ka, with a proposed investment from Recton. So why does the minister seems to prefer a foreign private company over our own national telecom? It simply does not add up. The telecom market of over 1.3 million per month requires competition and not duopoly, which will effectively operate as a monopoly. Currently, Ay3ka has the most competitive billing rate for voice, which serves majority of low-income Ghanaians. This and many will force others companies to reduce prices. The policy of creating duopoly is bad. It is even worse when such unholy marriage is contemplated with Telecel. It could not impact positively on the industry, and the two companies are better off standing on their own. Ladies and gentlemen, Honorable Sam George also moved away from Recton to Telecel because he argued that Recton has no experience and technical expertise. But the minister is on record to have said that Ay3ka has the requisite expertise, suggesting that Ay3ka's problem was not technical expertise. It is common knowledge that Ay3ka's problem is financial capital investment. A clear example of Ay3ka technical powers was during last year's international undersea fiber outage, which crippled internet service nationwide. While MTN and Telecel went down, Ay3ka remained operational, keeping Ghanaians connected when it matters most. Remarkably, Ay3ka's engineers have managed to keep outdated and end-of-life equipment running effectively, proving that their exceptional skill and commitment despite limited resources. In any case, Afritel expertise is not in doubt, and it is one of the foremost companies in Africa. It came off third during the Deloitte assessment. It cannot be ignored that Afritel brought the lances of Scancom, which is now MTN. Afritel, together with Ay3ka, have all the expertise needed for the industry. Recton also, through their publication, clearly stated that when they are given the green flag to invest in AT, they will bring partners like KNet, Huawei, and others to have a sound planning and faultless execution for transforming AT into a successful telecom company. The use of lack of expertise as a pretext is therefore not tenable. Fellow Ghanaians, we therefore stand with the 300 employees and management as well as 2,000 contract staff of AT. I take that again, fellow Ghanaians. We therefore stand with the 300 employees and management as well as 200 contract staff of AT who have been disappointed by the oscillating policy position of the minister and lack of direction for AT. We stand with the many staff who disapprove of the unhealthy marriage, or what is best described as unholy colonization of AT by Telecel, with the active facilitation of the Minister of Communication, Honorable Sam George. We stand with the many Ghanaians who believe, and rightly so, that the planned annexation of AT by Telecel will rob them of choice and the much needed competition within the telecom space. We strongly approve this move. We are not oblivious of the newfound relationship between the minister and Telecel. We take notice of the lobbying and alleged private gains this transaction presents to the minister. We take notice of MTN founding the Jata Foundation, which is linked to the minister. We equally take notice of the minister's directing Telecel to sponsor the Homowo Festival in his constituency for the first time. The same week, he announced the supposed takeover of AT by Telecel, which event took place with the participation of the minister. If this cannot be described as conflict of interest, I would not know. We equally not unmindful of the fact that any dealing with Telecel requires parliamentary approval, yet the minister behaved as if he was the law himself. We therefore take notice that the minister has also caused published stories on the takeover of AT by Telecel, reported domestically and internationally, to be pulled down due to the public disapproval of it. We caution the minister to hasten cautiously. We are aware that the minister tried to undo the backlash of the announced measure with a press conference on the 5th of September 2025, where he stated emphatically that there was no such development taking place, adding that the situation at hand was rather a matter of force majeure. Meanwhile, his own ministry had published the news of the measure as a long-term solution on its official social media platform. Just that evening, after meeting the management and staff of AT on the 3rd of September 2025. Ladies and gentlemen, the consistency and lack of leadership associated by incompetence of the minister has thrown management and staff of AT in a state of confusion. The current situation has made it increasingly clear that there are deep-seated doubts, contradictions, and confusion surrounding the entire plan for AT, largely because it has been shrouded in secrecy and characterized by a glaring lack of transparency. What makes the situation even more concerning is the stark inconsistency between statements made by Telecel and the minister. While the stakeholders are yet to have the full insight of the report of Recton by KPMG and recommendations of Attorney General Office, as previously stated by the minister, the group CEO of Telecel confirmed in an interview with Bloomberg, published on the 3rd October, that this move will be backed by a $50 million network upgrade. The Bloomberg story was shared by Telecel Group link page. Telecom's Bloomberg story was shared by Telecom Group link page, but has since been deleted, just like the minister's own page announcement of the merger and subsequently pulled down of the story. The legitimate question is, why will both the minister and Telecel make public announcement about the merger and then deliberately then soon pulled it down? As a caucus, we wish to unequivocally object to any deal with Telecel by way of merger, absorption, acquisition, or whatever term the minister seeks to place on such unholy alliance. We object on grounds that it is a scam to dispose of a national asset to fill private pockets. It is technically, operationally, and financially unconscionable. I want you to use the word very well. Unconscionable transaction. Okay? I want to take it again. It is a scheme to dispose of a national, operationally and financially unconscionable transaction. We reiterate that Telecel has no exclusive expertise that the staff of management of Ay3ka do not possess. Telecel's promise during the acquisition of Vodafone to invest $500 million was not honored, and same fate awaits Ay3ka should the government agree to any merger or alliance. Telecel has indebtedness of over $400 million. It is our reasonable belief that Telecel only seeks to benefit from the over 3 million customers of Ay3ka and only seek to solve their customer base to over 10 million without cost. We believe that return participation will position Ay3ka to overperform Telecel, and it is inappropriate to surrender the capacity of Ay3ka, a state-owned company, to a private company by majority ownership. We object to this transaction because there is no clear plan of safeguarding jobs and livelihood of several thousands of people by the promoters. Ay3ka is a strategic national asset which was acquired to promote a certain goal. As noted earlier, the objective for the acquisition was to protect the jobs of Ghanaians, protect a competitive balance of the telecom sector, safeguard critical national digital infrastructure, and enhance Ghanaians' participation in the sector. These objectives are still relevant and worth pursuing. By safeguarding Ay3ka, we are protecting 300 employees, 200 contract staff, and over 10,000 indirect employment, in line with the objection of the acquisition of Ay3ka by government. Even though Honorable George noted that Telecel has agreed to absorb the 300 full-time employees, there is no assurances and comfort from Telecel regarding this, except their focus on adding on Ay3ka's customers to their base. The fate of the 200 contract staff will be in limbo, same as the over 10,000 indirect jobs comprising of freelancers, which is over 1,500, small-scale vendors, distributors, and their employees, among others. For instance, if Ay3ka is not safeguarded, hundreds of small-scale vendors who sell airtime, credits, and operate mobile money service under Ay3ka's brand are expected to lose their primary source of income. Similarly, the operation of distributors will no longer be required, since the merger entity will restructure and streamline distributions channels, because distributions are structured to operate on a telecom by telecom basis, meaning that each mobile network operator has its own exclusive set of distributors. The planned merger of Ay3ka also has impact on the World Bank Fund, which is $50 million project, the Digital Infrastructure Venture, which is DIV project. The $50 million World Bank funded initiative implemented through Ghana's Minister for Communication, was a landmark project designed to expand high-speed government connectivity across the country. The initiative successfully linked up over 900 district centers, hospitals, police stations, post offices, and other key public institutions, thereby strengthening government service delivery and bridging the digital gap. A critical feature of this project is that its infrastructure was interconnected with Ay3ka's network, which formed the backbone for its nationwide coverage. A shutdown under the pretext of force majeure means the DIV project ceased to exist. The implication of this are that the over 900 services centers will lose a dedicated and reliable high-speed link to support their operations and thereby widening the public service delivery gap in the country. Ladies and gentlemen, we need to safeguard Ay3ka to promote competition. At a time that the industry requires antitrust regulations and at the time that the regulator is expected to implement antitrust regulations, including imposing rules on the S&P, on pricing and infrastructure sharing, the planned move by the government to collapse Ay3ka is not appropriate. A policy of telecom duopoly will constrain the welfare of option of customers will be limited. Currently, Ay3ka has the lowest standard billing for voice and thus bring on board many low-income users of telecom service. Why will any government contemplate collapsing such a company? Ladies and gentlemen, we suggest to the government to revisit the blueprints which form the basis for the engagement with Recton. Fortunately, Recton has secured $150 million, which has been ring-fenced and locked down for the past 4 months for the purpose of this transaction, with a promise of $1 billion funding in the next 5 years. This is adequate capitalization according to the minister's own estimates. There is evidence that Recton participation secures over 20% of market shares participating for Ay3ka. Therefore, there is no justification for the minister backtracking after initially agreeing unless there is no play ball. Unless they are not playing ball. In conclusion, we ask the President, His Excellency John Dramani Mahama, to direct his Minister for Communication to focus on making Ay3ka work rather than hastily trying to dispose it off. To this end, a comprehensive and transparent investment into the circumstances surrounding the proposed acquisition of Ay3ka by Telecel is imperatively considering the growing inconsistency, secrecy, and conflicting narratives surrounding the transaction, and in the interest of protecting Ghanaian strategic national assets and the long-term viability of the telecom sector, it is troubling that Honorable Sam George, who was once an outspoken critic of his predecessor for the way state assets were handled, is now presiding over a West process that appears to be taking place behind closed doors. Without proper consultation, scrutiny, or parliamentary oversight, we wish to make it clear that we will not sit idle by and allow a single minister to unilaterally dispose of a critical national asset such as Ay3ka. The strategic importance of this company to our national infrastructure, digital sovereignty, and economic development cannot be overstated. We understand that Telecel Group CEO has been in the country recently, supposedly making concrete efforts to finalize what many view as questionable deal in an apparent attempt to strengthen their position and gain goodwill. Telecel has partnered with government on a series of public initiatives aimed at drawing attention from the president and other key decision makers. As part of this effort, Telecel has just last week collaborated with the Minister of Health to support the Ghana Medical Trust Fund, into brackets, Muhammad Care, through which they donated cervical cancer screening equipment to the Kolubu Teaching Hospital. Similar donations and ceremonies are also scheduled to take place in Tamale and Sohwi Government Hospital in the coming days. We are also sending a strong and unequivocal caution to Telecel Group that any attempt to acquire a strategic state asset through unlawful, non-transparent, or irregular means will not only lack legitimacy, but will also attract severe consequences in the future. The people of Ghana and the next government of the NPP will not sit idle by while a vital national asset is handed over under questionable circumstances. Any deal shrouded in secrecy, executed without due parliamentary scrutiny, or in violation of the procurement and regulatory standards will be subject to future review, reversal, and possibly legal action. We therefore remind Telecel that state assets are held in trust for the people of Ghana, not for the benefit of private interest or political expedience. Any company that chooses to be complicit in such an irregular transaction should be prepared to face reputational damage, legal scrutiny, and potential nullification of any agreement entered under such circumstances. Further, it is our position that the whole transaction is unconscionable and failure to desist from engaging in at Airtel's own risks. This is not merely about the sale of a company, it is about protecting national institutions that have served Ghana diligently, nurtured some of the finest talents in the industry, and proving its strategic importance in moments of national crisis. Together, industry veterans, current staff, policymakers, and the highest office of the land, we must act decisively to ensure that AT remains in the hands of Ghanaians and continue to serve customers of our digital and economic future. Given this reality, the minority family observe that any decision regarding the future of AT must be subject to full parliamentary scrutiny. We are therefore demanding an immediate stop to the current consolidation, acquisition, merger, or transaction, a comprehensive parliamentary inquiry into the circumstances and terms of the proposed consolidation, full disclosure of all agreements, correspondence, and reports, including the transactional advice, recommendations of Afrotech Recton highest and best use of AT Ghana, a high-powered deep insight with ATC to ascertain the level of indebtedness and settle the impasse they have led to the withdrawal of services to AT. Media, thank you very much for your attention.
Yeah, so that is quite a long one. That's quite a long one, but you will understand that the load of information has been gathered over the past 6 months.
Yeah.
And we are using this information or this platform to share that information with you. As comprehensive as the press statement is, would mean that there are also a lot of questions that will need follow-up.
Yeah.
In that regard, the team is here. We'll be taking a few questions from you, and then we'll take. So we'll start with you. The first 3 questions, 1, 2, 3, and then we'll take the next.
So just know them now.
Yeah. Thank you very much. My name is Craig. So I work with GhanaMPs.com. In your statement, you indicated that the whole deal should be stopped for a parliamentary inquiry into this. And you also admonished that the president advised his minister with all this you said, if it's not heeded to, what next? Because in your statement, I heard the MPP future government, but you indicated that there are 300 workers, you stand with them. So immediately, knowing very well that they have to take majority, if that's not the case, what next?
Okay.
The next question. Yeah.
Hey, Jonah.
Yes, I work with FMU. First of all, you made a point that the Jakarta cement is linked to the minister.
No.
Jata's foundation.
Foundation, not cement.
All right, so the next question.
No, let him finish. Don't worry.
I think
Allow
you got
him.
the foundation wrong, so maybe
It's Jata Foundation,
All
not
right, then
cement.
Continue.
Continue.
So you made a point that the future governance will not report service today. Will you be kind to us when will the NPP come from?
Okay, that's fine.
All right. So next question.
Two items. First of all, the minister talks about the ballooning indebtedness of Haiti. That remains stable today. That has been accumulating over the years. It's sufficient to say that we are at a point where currently Haiti is unable to make profit, not even break even. We talk about paying its indebtedness. The previous administration equally considered other options. Don't you think privatization is the way to go? Because I see some conflict here. In one breath, you talk about a better offers that were made by other private entities that you think we could consider. Another breath, you talk about Haiti being a strategic national asset that should be diligently given away. How do you marry it?
That's fine.
All right. So myself and OPK
Yes.
together with the ranking will help you answer the question. Just on the last one, indebtedness of Haiti has been a legacy issue, but how sustainable Haiti operates will determine its capacity to pay off its debt. We know Haiti is indebted to ATC, that is American Tower Company. We also know that it is indebted to Helios. These are tower companies that are providing services to Haiti. Now, Haiti has also shown resilience over time that despite these challenges, they operate and make a monthly revenue of about 70 million Ghana cedi. A government entity making 70 million a month is no means an achievement. There are few government entities in this country that are yielding such a revenue. So with that capacity, we don't think that the proper way is to give out AT to Telcel. Now, there was a roadmap that was drawn when Honorable Esler was in office. The roadmap was the fact that you need private sector participation. We are not against private sector participation, but we are against a national asset which was being consolidated to protect strategic national investment in infrastructure being given away. So what is the difference between privatization and private sector participation? The difference is that whilst in the case of the private sector participation, you are allowing them to take some shares in the operation. Government can still hold majority shareholders, or the government can be minority shareholder, but it gives them the opportunity for government to get in by way of dividends. At the end of the day, the profitability from that particular company. So we are not against privatization. Now that roadmap is what the minister had agreed to, but it's now backtracking from that. And what was the roadmap? Developmental Ghana was contracted by the government to determine the participation of private sector in Haiti. Hanan came in, Southern came in, then there was also Afritel. These were the three top companies that were listed. Now Hanan was given the bid, but due to the elections and then the financial challenges, Hanan withdrew from the bid. Southern was not interested again, but Afritel is still interested. Why do you want to go away from that roadmap? Now, even when the minister came into power, he started with that roadmap. All of a sudden, he said that he's no more dealing with Rectron because we suspect that the minister thinks that Rectron is not playing ball, as he usually put it. And that's what we are against. We want the best for 2029, and the new Patriotic Party is going to form the next government. So we don't have doubt as to that. The last question was to the effect that, if not heeded to, what next? And I think my colleague OPK may want to take that.
All right. So I think that, first of all, we need to appreciate the role of the minority in all of this. We have a responsibility to check government. I mean, and that is what we are doing. This press conference is not aimed at coming at any private enterprise or any deal for that matter. I mean, what we seek is for the best for the country. One, how do we protect the state interest? I mean, the national assets like AT, and ensure that the workers who are today finding their bearing will be maintained. So that is our aim. Yes, we don't have the numbers, but we have the voice. And that is why we have called for a press conference today to highlight the matters. Next week when Parliament resumes, we are considering a lot of, to do a public statement, issue a statement on the floor of Parliament, to do a half-hour motion, anything to bring to the attention of the country these issues. I think that we will do that. Yes, we have a government that is not our government, but we are hoping and praying that this government listens to the plea, not coming from the minority, but from the workers, not coming from the minority, but from the Ghanaians. I mean, how we are able to protect this national asset. And I think that if they have the conscience, like the ranking said, they will listen to what the minority is saying. So these are mechanisms at our disposal, and we'll be exploring them when Parliament resumes. But the foremost thing is to bring to your attention that the struggle by the young minister to find a solution is not helping. I mean, the flip-flopping, the inconsistencies, I say this today, I say that tomorrow, is not helping in this matter. It looks like, as a state, we really do not have a direction as to how we want to go in this whole AT disposal. You cannot just throw it away. I mean, giving it to Telecel, if they have the capacity, fine. But what are the details? The Ghanaian people must know the details. Who represents the Ghanaian people? It is the Parliament of Ghana. Wait till Parliament reconvenes, bring the details to Parliament, then we can go ahead. But you sit here, Bloomberg now reports that Telecel Group is saying that they are going to invest 50 million, when this matter has not come to Parliament. Government owns 100% in AT. Government owns 30% in Telecel. And any matter that involves these companies must be brought to the custodians or the representatives of the people. So if that has not been done, then it becomes problematic. And for us, that is what we talk about. The seemingly incompetent.
Recton is also a private company. So why will a minister choose $50 million over $150 million? Where the Recton is even prepared to do over $1 billion within 5 years. That is our concern. Obviously, like he said, AT is still potent today. Although despite their financial challenges, they are still as good. And with the MOU, government stand to benefit 40%. And then AT, what's the name? Recton will take 60%. That is another better arrangement. So for you to just decide that you are giving out the subscribers of AT to Telecel, we think that is highly unacceptable.
All right.
So no, it's okay. It's okay. Let's
doesn't matter that the country owns 30% stake in Telecel.
Yes, as it stands now.
So then it's like government giving this off to itself in a way.
No, by majority, Telecel is a private company because they have 70%. So they control the board.
all right. So let me question.
But Kabiru, it is not about giving AT to Telecel. It's not about giving AT to Telecel or giving AT to Recton. That is not our interest. Our interest is not a company that gets to, for want of word, swallow AT. You understand? Our interest is how these matters are disposed of. Our interest is the transparency that is lacking in this whole transaction. What is it that Telecel is bringing on board? What is it that Recton is bringing on board? That is why, in the wisdom of government, they have engaged KPMG to advise them. Has the advice from KPMG been submitted to the minister? No. So why is the minister in a rush to dispose of the property when he's not even gotten the advice? That for us is a concern. We have engaged a strategic person to consider the various options for us. What if they come and say that, no, government should not give it to anybody, and that government should go and find the money to inject in the company? So it is not about who gets what. We are not against Telecel. We are not here to advocate for Rectron. We are here to ensure that the proper thing is done. I mean, what is at stake are properties of the state. All the tel sites, everything that is there are properties of the state. And as for us as a minority, we want to see some bit of transparency in the entire process.
All right, so your question.
My name is Ohene. I work for Adom TV and Adom FM. I know that you as minority have certain right to come through the committee to invite the minister to engage him, for him to brief you on some of these issues that you're raising. I'm asking you, have you done that, and what has been the posture of the minister? In all of this, are we not driving investors who are supposed to come and help build some of these national assets? Are we not driving them away by, doing what we're doing now?
Okay.
All right.
Yes,
all right,
your
question.
Let's take some.
Your question.
Ranking. We've all complained in the past, or still complaining about MTN being the significant market, holding the significant market power as far as the sector is concerned. And your colleague, the minister, is making an attempt to break that monopoly by bringing up Ay3ka to offer some competition. Wouldn't you be welcoming it? I mean, at the national level, we have MPP, NDC, we have other political parties, but we know that the two of you are the significant power holders. And so, wouldn't you support your colleague rather to bring Ay3ka at power to break that monopoly of MTN?
Okay.
All right. The last question we want to take. There's no last question. All right.
Okay.
Thank you very much. There are 3 questions. The very last one, I will try to address that because it's purely the efficiency of Ay3ka and that MTN. What the minister is doing is not to break any monopoly. The minister is actually strengthening monopoly by creating a duopoly. And if you know the difference between duopoly, monopoly, you realize that duopoly is as good as monopoly, right? The minister is basically consolidating the number 2 and number 3 players to form number 2 and then compete with number 1. But in actual case, Ay3ka has the lowest billing rate in terms of voice, even though it is number 3. MTN, which is the SMP, that is a significant market player, is supposed to be actually be competing at a particular rate. It is not doing that. It is violating the SMP rules, which we will come to on another day, and we have a day we'll address MTN and its challenges. But what the minister is doing is rather promoting monopoly. Now let's assume that he succeeds, and then MTN by pricing, by strategy, collapse that particular company. What do we have? Nothing. It's left with only MTN. But if you have 3 players, we have 4 players, all of them struggling, all of them trying to woo customers, the benefit is to the Ghanaian. So what the minister is doing is actually causing, or is going to create even more monopoly if that consolidation is done and these companies is made one and they are to compete with MTN, which has about 90%, in fact, average of 70 to 80% of the market in terms of mobile money, in terms of voice, in terms of data. So the minister is actually causing more problems by that particular strategy. It's not helping the Ghanaian people by that strategy. So we shouldn't be talking about the fact that the minister wants to help to break the monopoly of MTN. In any case, why will you support another private company to break a monopoly of a private company? It is not the business of the minister to do that. You should be strengthening your own company to compete with the private companies in a way to maximize the welfare of Ghanaians. Why was he around the place shouting about data prices?
He cannot do anything about data prices because we have no control over those companies. Assuming it was Airtel, he could ask them to say that by way of government policy, reduce data prices for the good people of Ghana. Okay, so that is the problem with the minister's conduct. He's rather hurting the industry. Now there's a question about the engagement with having to engage with the minister. When DSTV issue came up, the minority, and this is a story not told, most of you are not aware, the minority wrote to the chairman of the Information and Communication Committee asking that a meeting be summoned with the minister and that of the DSTV multi-choice to come and brief House. They bluntly turned down that offer. Of course, they are majority in the committee. So if the people are not willing to engage, if they feel that by virtue of the fact that the Ghanaian people have given them majority in parliament and by representation and proportion in the committee, they behave as they wish, it is our duty to tell the Ghanaian people what the matters are. So we are willing to engage. The minister is a minister who is grandstanding and shoulder high, doing as he wishes. But as members of the committee, you heard him on radio, even when we were trying not to talk about, you talk about investment of people. Have you heard the committees? Have you heard from the committee since January 2025? No. This is our first press conference we're addressing. Because we believe that the industry is sensitive. We believe that the industry requires fairness and tact. That's why we're not speaking. But the minister was on radio, on television, Joy News, saying that members of the committees or minority members are incompetent because we respect
the state has to do. And that, for me, are the things that the minister should be concerned about. How we are going to provide shared platforms so that companies like Ay3ka, companies like Telecel will take advantage and now be providing competitive pricing to that of MTN. That, for me, are policies that the minister should be taking. But it seems that since he took over power, all he cares about is to stand before cameras and be telling us about things that are not tangential, things that are of no importance, things that an ordinary policy maker in his ministry can easily do. You understand? The industry, and it's a serious national security concern. Can you imagine that tomorrow MTN, who is a dominant figure, decides that it's shutting down operations in Ghana? The entire country is collapsed. And that is why there ought to be conscious effort at creating competition, at trying to build a lot more companies. If you go to America, they have several companies. Go to even South Africa, there are several telecom companies. It is because you cannot hand over the entire telecommunication infrastructure to one company. And once that is happening, there has to be a national security concern to address that. And that for us is our concern. So going to hand over Ay3ka to Telecel, thinking that it's going to create competition, will mean that you have not learned from the past and you have not seen what measures in the industry did to us. And for us, it's a major concern. It's a serious thing that ought to be addressed. All right.
Okay, I think that we want to thank you, but to add to what OPK just said, if you listen to the press conference attentively, we stated, and we want to re-emphasize, that we are not against competition in the market. We are actually for it. Why are we talking about MTN dominating the market? It's because they have the resources and they are investing. That's just the reason. That is all. So if you have a company, if you have a strategic partner that is ready to invest in your company with 100% shareholding, you should be looking at that place. That is all. If we are able to encourage investors to invest in Ay3ka, and they do it very well, I don't think that we all should be talking about MTN enjoying being the dominant in the market. But if we decide that two weak companies, let's put them together and think that we are doing something, I'm sorry, we are not doing anything. We really are not doing anything. So on that note, we want to thank all of you for coming again. And Ejona, or whatever, where is Ejona? Your question as to when are we coming, whether MPP is coming, that shouldn't be your problem. Your problem should be what we are talking about. Okay, that should actually be your problem. You should look at protecting the state assets. That should be our interest. Whether we come today, tomorrow, that one, leave it to God. Okay, we said things more than what you are saying. Okay, and we are sitting behind. What was your question?
Yeah,
we are not discouraging investment. It's the same thing that Kabiru said. Unless you are telling me that media is no more important in democracy. If media is so important, your engagement is so important. So I don't think that investors will run away because we've had press conference. I don't think so. So once again, we are very grateful.
Thank you.
Yes.
Welcome back.
Ejona. Yes.